it away. Hello, everybody. Thank you for bearing with me and my tech ineptitude. And we are ready to begin here today for our second to last workshop of Oregon Country Fair in the Clouds 2021. We have Lane East Asian Network, who will be presenting to us the workshop Navigating Microaggressions with Nikolaj Byrdman. For this workshop, Lean asks, have you ever felt unseen or othered in a room full of people? This is a commonplace experience for many folks with marginalized identities. Whether you are unintentionally propagating microaggressions or subjected to them, we discuss the cause, effect, and various solutions you may implement in your personal life to transform our culture into one that includes all people in safe and equitable relationship dynamics. And a bit about Lean. Lean was established as a safe space for our East Asian community in Lane County and surrounding areas in Oregon to find solace and solidarity while bridging both inter and intra-ethnic divides through community building and education events. So glad to have you here. Lean represented here with Nikolaj. Nikolaj and I have been communicating for a little bit now. They helped us craft a Asian American solidarity statement that we will be coming out with soon to present to the board. So thanks so much for your collaboration with us as an organization and here in the event today.
Okay, thank you. So hi everyone, I hope your day is going well. Thank you for your interest in attending the Lane East Asian Network's workshop on navigating microaggressions, hosted by the Oregon Country Fair 2021 Fair in the Clouds. My name is Nikolaj Byrdman. My pronouns are ze, zer, and they, them. And I'm going to be your moderator as we go through the workshop topics today. Be aware that I may read your comment out loud so that everyone can learn with and from you. So feel free to say at the beginning of your comment if you do not want it to be shared aloud. So just a little bit of a background, but this is my first time moderating a workshop, so I'm a bit nervous and I'll be reading a lot from my notes that I've taken to prep for this. But I'm also really excited to be here with you today and see what we can discover together. As you know, we're here to discuss how we can better navigate microaggressions. But first, I'd like to give you a little background information on Lean so you understand where my perspective is coming from. And it sounds like I already got a little bit of introduction, so I'm going to go ahead and skip to the part that wasn't mentioned. So Lean is also a place for East Asian folks encompassing origins in both Southeast and Northeast Asia to celebrate their heritages and support each other through the unique challenges they face due to the racism inflicted upon them by white supremacists and their quote-unquote peaceful co-conspirators. This includes the increased vitriol and violence directed at them throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the lasting effects of Oregon's anti-Chinese laws and mob attacks, and the lack of historical education on Oregon's participation in sending thousands of Japanese Oregonians to concentration camps in Portland and beyond. As far as my specific marginalized alignments go, I am East Asian, more specifically half Japanese and half Chinese. I am femme, non-binary, and pansexual. My knowledge is only based on what I have experienced personally, as well as what other marginalized folks have told me to be similar experiences to their own. Of course, I cannot speak for all BIPOC or even for all East Asian femme, non-binary, and pansexual folks. As such, you will find that the bulk of my examples come from my own life experiences, as I want to stay in my lane with an emphasis on my own oppressions and, generally speaking, letting other people speak to their own stories. Part of holding space for all other marginalized folks is continually to have this awareness of what privileges I hold and don't hold, then use these nuances to inform my interactions as they intersect with the oppressions and liberation of others. It is this extra effort to be aware of a nuanced view on social realities and put that awareness into practice that does the bulk of working on building equitable relationships. All right, so now that you have a little bit of a background on lean and myself, I'd like to bring us back to focus and define what we're here to talk about. So a microaggression is a conscious or subconscious behavior directed at members of a marginalized group that causes harm to them. This can happen to transgender folks, disabled people, BIPOC, unhoused people, those who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community, and other alignments. You will also find that many marginalized folks, including myself, will point out that the term micro in the term microaggression is defined as such because that is the filter with which the most privileged will define it. But to us, it is often constant and it's not micro in scale. That modifier, when put into the hands of the general public and powers that be to define it, as is often the case, will always lead that line between microaggression and aggression to be drawn at a point that makes us complicit in our own oppression. So that brings us to our first activity, breaking down harmful terminology and replacing them with new terms that lend more power to the oppressed. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical example. So imagine that a business owner of white heritage was offering an event space for a BIPOC event to promote inclusivity. In the announcement, the business owner writes, "We care about supporting diversity and inclusion efforts. So we are excited to announce that we have decided to allow this BIPOC event on our property to include them in our event space." What intersections of privilege may be at play in their phrasing and word choice? And how would you rephrase it to center BIPOC in a more equitable way? A few ideas to think about are historical and current oppressions, the concept of land ownership, who is considered to be a guest into the space, and who is being centered as the actor. Okay, I think we'll go into the breakout sessions.
Yeah, so when I was talking about the breakout room, I was talking about it more as like a green room. And I actually can't figure out breakout rooms. So,
Oh,
but if
okay,
you
that's
want
totally
the
fine.
breakout room to be part of the workshop, I can try and call my tech person to help.
Oh, don't worry about it. I feel like there are so few of us. Like if you
Okay.
wanted, we could just talk about it here.
Okay.
Does anybody want to start? Or
Well, it's hard for me. Like I'm more of like a reading learner than auditory. So could you read it again so that I can try and listen again and maybe type it out as you read it?
Oh, okay, no problem. I can go ahead and
Yeah,
do that. That's a good point. I should have prepped for that.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah, that's part of making it more accessible. I'm a really slow typer, so. Okay, so this is the first activity, breaking down harmful terminology and replacing them with new terms that lend more power to the oppressed. So imagine that a business owner of white heritage was offering an event space for a BIPOC event to promote inclusivity. In the announcement, the business owner writes, We care about supporting diversity and inclusion efforts so we are excited to announce that we have decided to allow this BIPOC event on our property to include them in our event space. Also, I'm going to go ahead and upload that to my Google Docs so I can just copy and paste. So yeah, the thing that I'm just wanting is to break it down and just, just all the different aspects of privilege at play and how that business owner could rephrase it to center the BIPOC community.
Yeah, I like what you said about thinking about like the terms we have decided to allow this BIPOC event on our property to include them. It almost sounds like it's a charitable thing, like they're doing it for their own benefit. The business owner is doing it for their benefit, of feeling like they're doing the right thing, but they're really not, centering BIPOC folks. So I mean, I think one way that could make it better is like paying BIPOC people, naming that it's a white-led event and space. Name some things around like how there hasn't been this kind of inclusion effort before, and that's the space that BIPOC people would be walking into. And that, there's, I guess I would want to hear more about like, if it's white-led, is it also mostly white participants? Can space be held for BIPOC people if they do come?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was also thinking, kind of like what Oregon Country Fair did for me. I was paid to help craft the Oregon Country Fair statement. And so when in doubt, I feel as if when people make inclusivity statements, it's really like, putting their money where their mouth is to actually support BIPOC in those efforts. And I thought that was really cool of Oregon Country Fair. So I thought that was another thing the business owner could have done. Does anybody have any other comments? Robert.
Was that an actual note that you saw, or did you draft that up yourself?
Oh, well, it was kind of based on something that one of my friends said. He said that he was well, I've also experienced this in workplaces where I'm the person crafting the statement, just because I am the token BIPOC, and that's the way it's going to be done right. And I've just like seen it done poorly. But also one of my friends had an experience where he was really excited to get this popular event space, and he was hosting a BIPOC event, and then he realized that he found himself thanking the host profusely for like, oh, thank you for allowing me to be here and stuff. And he was actually the person who mentioned, wait, why am I thanking them for making it inclusive to this, for somebody like me who wouldn't find this space as accessible due to my marginalization? That was cake. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, I guess we'll move on to the next one. Okay, and I have it online now, so I can go ahead and paste it. Okay, so this is just to go on to educate a little bit more about microaggressions. But microaggressions can be inflicted with no ill intent from the actor. But on the flip side, they can also be inflicted intentionally by those with less savory attitudes, with a tendency towards homophobia, transphobia, racism, classism, and one of the worst tendencies of them all in liberal communities. Believing their work of listening to the oppressed is done, as they sit in a place of so-called woke complacency. It might sound unpleasant for those who do not live in oppression, but if you're privileged, what you see as an unpleasant assertion is simply a reality that others have to go through, and they have no choice but to experience it every day. When someone expresses concern surrounding microaggressions, they are simply wanting. Okay, oh my God, I'm sorry. Sorry. But if you're privileged, what you see as an unpleasant assertion is simply the reality that others have no choice but to experience every day. So when somebody expresses concerns surrounding microaggressions, they're simply wanting to include you in their experience and help you grow. It means they haven't given up on their faith in your empathic ability to simply listen and act as their advocates. The difference between openness and resistance to learning is the extent of effort to observe mindfully even the most innocuous seeming interactions that most folks overlook. Humbling yourself when your actions are called into question, being okay with temporary discomfort and conflict as you grow, doing regular check-ins with yourself on the power dynamics at play in your everyday conversations, and above all, listening to marginalized people by viewing them as experts in understanding the many layers of their own oppressions when they tell you something is a microaggression. So this brings us to our second activity, overcoming complacent attitudes and elevating the voices of marginalized individuals. Imagine that you are at your workplace and your coworker comes up to you and starts complaining about how difficult it is for her to use her transgender assistant's pronouns, saying that her assistant, who is distressed about it, needs to be more patient, claiming she is just from that era where only he and she existed. How could your coworker respond more empathetically when her assistant expresses distress at constant misgendering and being called the wrong pronouns? Who holds the power in this relationship? And that is something to consider. So, and I'll go ahead and paste that.
Yeah, these are great scenario questions to think about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it makes me think about how it's like how we really rely on people to intervene. Like in this case, like just people to be watchful for this kind of thing and step up when they see trans coworkers experiencing stuff like this. And I don't know, this is a tough one for me in terms of like what I would actually say, because I guess it's like a shyness, confidence thing, but I mean, something along the lines of like, we prioritize what's important to us. Like it's possible to just keep practicing and learn. I guess I might remind the person who's doing the misgendering, or I might like do an education moment of like how to apologize when I misgender by apologizing and not making it about me and not like turn it around on the other person like they're an inconvenience.
I think that's a really great point. And this is something that I've actually experienced, as a transgender person in one of my workplaces. And I really appreciate that. And we actually went through a training that talked about this is how you apologize. And I know it sounds really simple, but a lot of people haven't really been taught how to properly apologize and make it meaningful and center the person who is oppressed. And I really appreciate people like you that, just kind of think these things through, and how to be present for the transgender people in your life. Does anybody else have any comments or ways that the co-worker could have better approached the situation?
Nikolaj? Whoa! Understandable.
Sorry, that's Christy. uh, okay. So I guess you already sort of answered that, but how could your coworker respond more empathetically, but also if you're actually in that situation of hearing somebody say that situation to you? I know a lot of people feel really frozen, but what are some ways that you think you could approach that in a way that would be very advocating for your coworker who is transgender?
Hi, thanks for that prompt and those questions. It's really, yeah, scenarios that are really real and possible. So I appreciate just getting a chance to think about it. I think my instinct in a situation like that would be to turn to the person that is the recipient of that kind of comment, and whether it's gauging wordlessly or asking for some space to check in with them, to ask what they need, if they would like me to say something to that person, if they need anything at all, but kind of leaving it up to them to decide what they're really needing in the moment. And if they're wanting support, be offering support to have a conversation with that coworker, or maybe they're just wanting someone to sit with them, or whatever it could be anything, but just really recognizing that everybody has different needs, and not to just assume that someone would want you to step in, or that they wouldn't want you to step in, but just kind of like turn to them and allow them to have that power to decide for themselves what they're needing in that moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's a really great point, because, also due to the power dynamics, the person who's the assistant might get in trouble, for speaking up for themselves. And it really should be for the oppressed person to decide how they want to be advocated for. So I thought that was a really great point. Okay, are there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. Okay. Okay, so the next question, I actually haven't typed this out yet because I was just going to speak from my own experience, but something that I've noticed, which I think happens to a lot of BIPOC, including myself, but in Eugene, I will often be in a room full of white people, and they will tend to ignore me and not include me in conversations, not really ask me about my life. And it does really feel as if they tend to center themselves. And it's not, I don't believe it's just white people who do it, but it also happens to, transgender people or just other people who are kind of othered. And so I guess this would be a bit of a workshop, but have any of you experienced that? And in those moments, how would you want people to advocate for you? And if you haven't really been in many of those situations, what are some things that you could do to make people feel included?
This is a great question, and this often happens to me in the form of people asking me questions based on whatever marginalized identities I hold that they may know about, or that may just be obvious and apparent to them. Often, like brownness, ambiguous exoticness, and you know, asking me like where I'm from, where I'm really from, like, you know, am I Latina, am I Middle Eastern, like trying to figure out what I am. So it's a great question because this often happens like when there aren't other people around. So I've never had that kind of thing interrupted. But I can say that one thing I think about, because like I think that I do the same thing sometimes, you know, like I really have to watch myself and my tendency to highlight people's otherness when I'm meeting them for the first time. And so I just really do my best to like just be really conscious and have that lens of like, you know, would I be saying this to this person if they were, you know, of the dominant culture? And catching myself a lot more when I start to add that lens. So I guess I would just want people who do hold dominant culture identities to keep that question in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely felt that. I think it's also a thing, even if you take the oppression factor out, a lot of people don't really know how to actively listen and communicate. And I think that just needs to be taught more. But especially when you add on the oppression, then it's like, it's just kind of like, it just kind of skyrockets in that sort of behavior. So I think just a little more interpersonal awareness is kind of needed. Does anybody else have any other suggestions or things that would make you feel included? Okay, I guess that's it. So I actually didn't know how long this was going to run, so that was pretty much the whole thing. I did want to read something at the end of that question. So recently I was in an interview for Flux magazine, and they actually asked me a question that was related to microaggressions, and it was just something that I wanted to share because it's something that I would want the entire Eugene community to consider. But their last interview question was, what message would you want to put out there for the Eugene community to know and acknowledge? And my response was, it's incredibly, incredibly important that people come out and show up to these direct action events. But sometimes even more important than that is to make sure you see the humanity in the people of color in your life. Something that I've found to be a common thread is that other people of color that aren't East Asian have had the same experience as me, where they would be sitting in a room full of white people without a single person making eye contact with them, without including them in conversations, and without asking them about their lives. And so I want the Eugene community to know, we are not accessories. We are humans and we must be heard, because to not truly listen is to not respect and appreciate our humanity. And that's just something I really wanted to share because I thought it was really relevant to the microaggression workshop. And I think that's pretty much everything, unless anybody has any questions. And I would be more than happy to talk about, you know, being transgender or my specific oppressions. If anybody had questions on that or just want to have a little bit more of a discussion.
Thank you so much for that, Nikolaj. And am I pronouncing your name correctly, Nikolaj?
Oh, it's Nikolaj, but I also go by that. I actually don't really care very much.
Okay, Nikolaj. Okay. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing it earlier. Yeah, so I would love to hear more about Lean if you'd be interested in sharing just maybe how Lean was born, what kinds of projects you've worked on, what you're working on now, how we can support and follow your work.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, sure. I'd love to talk a little bit more. So Lean actually has an event coming up. So if you check out our Facebook page, we have a BIPOC movie night. That's going to be on the 23rd, and it's going to be at Alluvium. I'm not sure if you all know Alluvium Church. It's at the corner of 3rd and Monroe. And I'm really excited about that because I haven't really found anything like that in Eugene yet. And so a lot of what Lean's going to be doing now is going to be focused on the BIPOC community as well as education and activism events, but that's our current upcoming one. You could also follow our Facebook page, our Twitter, our Instagram, and we're still working on a few things, but we do have a lot of educational and fun content about the East Asian community on our social media. So if you wanted to do that, and another way you could support is to donate by going to our Venmo, which is Oregon Lean, or PayPal OregonLean@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's about everything.
Thank you so much. We have the virtual tip jar on the website, and I'm also putting it on the stream chat. And so, yes, such a gift to be able to support a grassroots organization like Lean, who is courageously seeding their efforts right now.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun coming here and working with you on the statement and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you everybody for coming.